get some.
Y'all in the winning circle, shot some squares though. You in the killing fields, ignoring the scarecrows. Yeah, ho, I'm Benny Blanco in the last scene, making the power play high off for caffeine. This is a tag team, fantasy the bad dream. The male version of Kerry killing the class queen. Bati bloggers quit dodging my emails. Take that whack shit off, the real prevail.
Welcome to Free Lunch Podcast, home of the New South Movement and the New South Movement Network. This is your boy Tight. We got BG on the line. Ghost, what's happening?
Man, it's nothing. The third day in fall in the beautiful state of Alabama, but it still feels like something.
How did the run go this morning? I knew you was doing the 5K. I saw the Batmans. How'd that go?
Marvelous. This is the second one in 2 weeks. Improved my time, and I didn't die, so that's important.
Are you training for a half marathon? What's up?
And eventually, that's in the plan, long-term plan. So just taking the steps, working my way up there. At 13, the half marathon will be probably the next step after I get a few of these 5Ks in. That's 13.1 miles. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I commend you because you absolutely did it for a good cause.
Yes,
I saw the St. Jude. You were running for St. Jude, so appreciate you representing New South Movement on that front. But for me, whenever there was long distance, it's always been conditioning me that it was for punishment. So it's hard for me to get into them long distance runs.
You say that, and that I feel like you too. I would always tell people that you're coming from playing the fast sports, football, basketball, baseball, you're used to running with an objective in the game, and then all of that distance running, like you said, was just not my cup of tea. But, I've had some friends that have done it and have gotten addicted to it, and I just say, well, I'm going to try it out, and I think it's happening to me as well. So it's a good thing. It's a good hobby, a good break away from the monotony of the day-to-day, and it's an improvement mechanism for your health. So I've enjoyed it so far, man. And
absolutely.
It's a good thing.
Well, we got another top tier A-list guest for the day.
Yes,
past week we had an opportunity to attend CBC, Congressional Black Caucus. It was kind of, for me personally, it was a bittersweet weekend. I personally enjoy CBC. But I think due to the happenings, losing a loved one, that really has been instrumental in me participating in CBC. That's where the bitter piece comes into that. So I do want to take a minute and salute my cousin Jackie, who worked on the Hill for years and really had me involved in the Congressional Black Caucus. So just wanted to take an opportunity to salute her on that front end.
And it was good to see how much of an impact she's had on that Hill. I mean, when you see all of these top representatives, people that are involved in the House and all of that stuff, and they're shouting her out on social media, that really speaks to her work and her dedication to all of the people that walk through those hallways. So yeah, I think we definitely owe her a moment. I'm on this podcast, so salute to cousin Jackie.
Absolutely, known as Linda to the immediate family. But I had an opportunity to meet today's guest, and it was ironic. And I always believe that the universe kind of works itself out. BG, today's guest, I actually had an opportunity to meet her during CBC weekend. Waiting on, they have the workshops and they have the different panel discussions happening. And we both were waiting on a town hall to take place that actually, typical CBC fashion, it got started a little bit later than anticipated. But that's to be expected, right? But right. I was able to meet someone, and I want to introduce her properly, so I'm pulling up her bio. But I think in this time, and what I mean by that is what's happening in Charlotte, She sat in the position of being a mayor of a city. So hopefully we can ask a few questions around how she would deal or handle that particular situation. But also with her being a woman of color in the public service high position is something else that I think for our audience is inspirational. She'll be able to tell her story being a product of East Palo Alto, which is and get this, BG. I did my research, and as I was doing my research, that's really in the heart of Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley.
Um, yeah, it is. And so with the gentrification that's kind of taking place in that city, I'm interested in talking about East Palo Alto, which is actually one of the youngest cities in the state of California. I think it was kind of established in 82, about 30,000 residents. And she had the opportunity to actually be the mayor. Now I believe she sits on the city council. Um, I'm also interested in hearing about the relationship she has with her daughter. Her daughter is a graduate of Spelman, and if she hasn't received her master's already, I know she was attending school at USC, Southern California. So it sounds like her daughter kind of helped to push her or encourage her to eventually run for mayor of a city that she grew up in. She's familiar with the Gulf Coast, BG. She was military, so she's had stunts in Pensacola. That's kind of the brother slash sister city to Mobile, where I'm from. So a lot in common with her being able to travel as military and being able to see different cities, but also uh, eventually going full circle and returning home and providing that public service to an area that she grew up in and she's very familiar with. So no further ado, to our free lunch family, to the listeners, we have Miss Lisa Yarbrough-Gauthier. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and it was definitely a pleasure meeting you during the Congressional Black Caucus meetings. As you've already indicated, where should I get started? When we talk about what's going on in our nation right now, let's start right there, where our young men are being executed by those who are sworn to protect and serve, those who are deciding that they are going to be the judge, jury, and executioner. There's something wrong. I am a mother of 3 young adults. My oldest son, all of my children are my heart, but when my son leaves the house, I shouldn't have to worry if he's going to come home or not. There's a problem within the nation right now where our police department has to do a better job. Saying you can't look at somebody of color and be of fear because you chose to go into a career where you have said that you want to protect and serve. And we're going to keep saying you're there to protect and serve. Anybody who commits, nobody's perfect, and people commit crimes. But that's why we have a judge, and we have a jury, and we have a system that is put in place to then look at the crime and decide if somebody should be punished or not. So I think from the top down in Washington, D.C., the COPS program, we need to look at how do we put all of these police departments under one umbrella and make sure that they're all doing the same thing. And with that, I also have to say that not all officers are horrible or terrible people. There's some good officers, and those few bad officers are giving the good ones a bad name.
Given your expertise as being in the mayoral seat, when an incident like this happens, when you have a police officer serving the community that kills a citizen, what should a mayor do as far as making sure that justice is served in that situation?
You know, with community policing and the role of government, we have to make sure that things are investigated properly. Okay. So within our community, and we're looking at having an oversight board that can look at things and make sure that things are done. And we can't allow that just the police department alone will investigate itself and self-investigate the process. So I know that there is a judge out here that gives some insight as to how that should take place. And again, there's some community organizations that are involved when cities do allow that. But as a community leader, I know that we have not, in my city, I have not had the issue where a police officer has killed a resident of East Palo Alto, but we have lost 2 officers within our community from the residents. And, when those things happen, you come together as a community to solve problems and talk about it and figure out what happened and how to prevent it from happening. Again, East Palo Alto is in a unique position because we do a lot of community policing. Our chief of police will get out of his vehicle and walk in different neighborhoods and knock on doors or just shake hands. And we run a program where we want our officers to be known throughout the community. So when you see them, you're not just seeing a police officer, you're seeing somebody who's a part of our community. And that kind of helps with those to cut down some of the friction.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
again, if something happened, a resident should be able to come to me, and as a political or an elected official, I have access to the chief of police and the police department and our city manager, and we should be able to make sure that those things are being investigated and taken care of seriously.
And I just asked that question because in both of these situations, in Tulsa and in Charlotte, I haven't seen much, I guess, being said from the mayors of those respective cities. So I was just wondering if there is some type of guarding or something that goes on that mayors feel like they may need to step back and allow other spokespeople to speak.
Well, I'll say this. To your point, BG. I haven't heard a lot from the Tulsa, Oklahoma mayor. I haven't heard anything from that particular mayor, but I have seen. I mean, I had the privilege of being on off yesterday, so I watched a lot of CNN, and I have seen the mayor of Charlotte speak. My concern is that she's basically, and this is kind of my question to you, Miss Lisa, how much power does the mayor have in these situations? For example, the releasing of the tapes. It sounds like she is, and when I say she, I'm saying the mayor that currently resides in Charlotte kind of plays the legal aspect of it, and she said that there's a legal piece that's taking place between trying to determine who is responsible or who owns the tapes, whether it's the police department of Charlotte or the state or whomever, and she's kind of letting those legal things play out. Does she have the authority to grant the release of those tapes?
Not necessarily, because you're dealing with some unions. You do have, so for our city, we're a general law city, and we have a city manager council form of government, and the city manager does the day-to-day operation. So the chief of police will report into the city manager reports into the council. So many times with unions, you have to allow unions to do their work, and the police department is a strong union, and they probably have rules on how to do things. But there's always an issue or time to press the issue, and you want to do what's right. Why that tape has not been released, I don't understand why it hasn't been released at this time, because I think there should be some pressure, and elected officials can apply some pressure for government to do the right thing. And I think that now it's beyond the time where that information should be shared with the community. And if you don't feel like it's good for everybody, at least you should have members within the community that you can share it with so that somebody understands what's going on. Because the perception of we're just not going to share it is not working, and it's causing more problems.
In Charlotte, they call the reserves in. Has there ever or what is the protocol for having the reserves called in? Is that something that you've ever had to? I mean, it doesn't sound like you've had to experience that, but are you familiar with that process, or what would need to take place in order to have the National Guard to assist?
I have never had to call the National Guard in. As I've said before, when we've had some issues as a community, we've come together and we've marched for peace. And the police have marched with us or have been there, and we allow community to talk. So never has there been a time where I felt like I needed to bring in, or we felt like we needed to bring in the National Guard. So that process I'm not familiar with. Community policing, when it's done the correct way, allows the residents and the police to kind of work together on issues.
I did want to get to more of your background because you're from East Palo Alto. Your residents grew up there, elementary school. I was kind of interested in two things: your personal story, but also just the demographics, being that you all are in that Silicon Valley area. Can you kind of talk about growing up and really what motivated you into public service?
East Palo Alto is near and dear to my heart. As you said, I wasn't born here but raised here. I've been in this community since I was 2, married and came back, and then I had an opportunity to raise my children here as well. My mother, a single mother, raised 6 children in East Palo Alto. She worked at the school district and was very instrumental. I had a mother that the community was never hungry, because if you stopped at our house and you were hungry and hadn't had anything to eat, I don't know how she did it, but she somehow fed the community, not just with food, but with love and anything else that the community needed. So I have that background of love from my mother. East Palo Alto used to be a predominantly African-American community. Through gentrification and different things that have happened, the community has changed. The demographics is a little bit different. We are 67%, I believe, Latino, 16% African-American, but still within Silicon Valley, East Palo Alto used to be the affordable housing community, and we're under attack right now from Silicon Valley, because people who have money understand that we're a community that's near the Bay. It's ideal to be here. We are at the center of Silicon Valley, and so there's some pressure from people who are buying up properties and doing things, and the growth that is happening that's changing our community. Again, I say I'm a product of this community. All of my elementary, middle school, high school was in this area, so East Palo Alto is near and dear to my heart. We became a city because we used to be 11 square miles, but as an unincorporated area, the county kept taking pieces of our community until we were left with 2.5 square miles of a community with 30,000 people. And we decided at that point we wanted to take control over our existence. We wanted our own police department, and we wanted to be able to say what was going to happen and how this city was going to evolve into what it is today. So that is why what was important to me. Now, why and how I became a council member, I had been approached several times to be on the council, and I never thought that this was my destiny. I didn't think I wanted to be an elected official. And it was on one case, you had mentioned my daughter, Brittany, who attended Spelman, and we were sitting at home, and she is the one who said, well, if you're not at the table making decisions, someone will be making decisions for you, and Mommy, you can do it. So the process of becoming an elected, I had to stop and listen to my daughter, who was telling me, don't back away from this opportunity. If it continues to come to you, it's coming to you for a reason. And so as a family, we worked together and worked and campaigned so that until I became elected. So on the first time out, I was elected to city council, and proud to say that I represent the community that I definitely grew up in and that I'm a part of.
What concerned you the most as you were preparing to go into public service in that capacity?
You know, what concerned me the most, in my mind, there was a negative connotation around elected officials. Some people didn't feel that electeds were genuine, and I didn't want to lose that part, because I believe that what God had for me was for me, and as long as I didn't put myself out there and I followed His will, that was the important thing. And I wanted to be able to be genuine. I want to have integrity. One of the things that I say oftentimes is that you have to have integrity in anything that you do. And what is important to me is that being true to myself and being Lisa when nobody else is watching. I can put on a show out and when I'm out, if that were the case, and then be somebody different, then that's not being genuine, and that's not having integrity. So I have to be able to say I'm representing my community because I want to save my community. I want to make sure that we move in a positive direction, and I want it to be a part of our future. So those were the things that were important to me.
You've seen how the growth of Silicon Valley has led to gentrification in your area. For our audience, can you kind of describe the beginning to where we are now with the Silicon Valley area? Because we have no sense of what that's like.
So growing up here, I can remember the orchards being around us and having open area. And then you see the growth. You know, Silicon Valley kind of was birthed in Palo Alto across the freeway from us with HP and Steve Jobs starting Apple and the growth of all of these tech companies. Right now we have Facebook that sits right on the border of East Palo Alto and is growing immensely, but it's in Menlo Park. And oftentimes what happens in Silicon Valley, especially for East Palo Alto residents, you know, our school system kind of suffers a little bit, and East Palo Alto residents are many times given the opportunity to be janitors or working in the kitchen at some of these companies, but those opportunities for engineers and other jobs like that, and we have not been able to access as much. So we continue to work on diversity and making sure that people are able to get in. But when you watch everybody kind of grow around you, you want access to those jobs. I'm very fortunate. I also work for a venture capital firm as an executive assistant, supporting a managing partner, and I manage the day-to-day operations in the office as well. So that gives me a little bit. I get out of the community and I drive somewhere else. But we're fighting for residents in the East Palo Alto and trying to encourage them to go to school and get their education, because we know education is what separates us, and we want people to have opportunities for the Facebooks, the Googles, the LinkedIn, and all these tech companies that are surrounding us right now. We want people to have access to those jobs so that they can have a living wage, and those living wage would then turn into the ability to pay for a mortgage within their community. Right now, we have 70% of the residents of East Palo Alto rent. So when you rent, many times you don't have control over your destiny. When you have an opportunity to purchase a home, and if you can do that, and if that is a good thing to do. So those property owners in East Palo Alto right now who own property, they're sitting in a good position because their property values have increased tremendously, and they are not as necessarily easy to push out. But those who are being displaced are the ones who are renting. And because of different laws within our state, there's a Costa-Hawkins law that prevents government from controlling the rental rates on single-family homes. But East Palo Alto is a city that is strong in rent stabilization, and the rent stabilization laws right now allows us to put some controls over multifamily units, and such. We're able to protect some of the residents that live in multifamily units. But this gentrification and people, the organizations that are surrounding us right now, we're feeling it. I watched my city go from predominantly African American to Latino, and right now we're feeling the push of others that are coming in, and that change sometimes is good, and sometimes it is not so good, because I hear people, what keeps me up at night is when I hear people say they're being displaced from the community that they want to live in, and the community that they lived in when nobody else wanted to be here, but because now it is a community that is seen as being different, and where others who have money want to live, now you're being pushed out further into the valley, and you can't live where you grew up and where you want to stay.
As I started reading this stuff, it's one of those situations where, from what I've read, the citizens and the folks of East Palo Alto are very proud of the culture and the multi-ethnicity that lives in that area, in that 2.5 square root or what have you. But when you have these large tech companies that come in, and then they see an opportunity to essentially it's obviously it's cheaper compared to Palo Alto, where Mark Zuckerberg, where he resides, is what I read. So that has to be a challenge to the residents. And are there any laws or any policies that you all are able to put in place to prevent that from happening, or is not really much you can do on the policy side?
So on the policy side, again, East Palo Alto is probably the only city in San Mateo County that has a rent stabilization strong rent stabilization laws and ordinances, and we have a tenant protection ordinance that protects tenants that are in multi-unit homes. But again, the issue that we're having now that we're going after is the Costa-Hawkins ordinance or law that prevents us from controlling single-family rents and units. Many units in this region right now, people are seeing a 400% increase in a rent. And I don't understand anybody who could then pick up 400%, 200%, or even 100%. Many people are working minimum wage jobs. So it prevents them from being able to live in this community. Now, we continue to try to strengthen, to not just try, we continue to work to strengthen our rent stabilization laws and ordinances. We have, like I said, the tenant protection ordinances, and we are the affordable housing community. We have 40% of affordable units within our city, just trying to keep up. But East Palo Alto, one of the other issues that we're facing with this affordability crisis is that these high-tech companies keep inviting people in to work, but we haven't kept up with the housing. We haven't built enough housing for those who are being invited in. And many of our surrounding cities are not developing and building affordable housing. So then East Palo Alto the pressure becomes greater because a lot of people need affordable housing to live in this region.
And if it's anything like San Francisco, which they're pretty close, it's ridiculous. I recently made a trip out there, and people are living in units. It's 4 and 5 people living in a unit that really should be lived in by 1 to 2 persons, and that's just because they have to split the rent. We
have secondary units where people have converted their garages to living spaces, and they have families living in a garage. We have to, with our code enforcement, stay on top of development in the backyards because housing is so important to people. People are living in sheds that you would keep tools in. And that's not fair to anyone. I don't think anybody should have to live in those conditions. So we need to figure out a way to create additional housing, but East Palo Alto as a whole cannot be the affordable housing solution for this region. Everybody has to play their part so that people are treated with dignity and respect and they have a place to lay their heads.
Public service. It's very important that we get involved in public service. What would you say to the young folks, millenniums, about the importance of being involved in public service and making your voice heard?
Well, we're faced with that even within this upcoming election, and I'm sure we'll probably discuss that at some point. But your vote is your voice. And you can't sit at home and not think that you won't be heard. Here we have planning commissions, we have transportation commissions, different boards, different things that you can get involved in so that you can make a difference in not only the present time, but what your life is going to look like in the future. So it's not that a time where you can sit at home and think that somebody else is going to solve problems for you. What I find here sometimes is that young people kind of get upset and they feel like things aren't happening the way they want it to happen. Or people, and not just young people will complain about the process, but those very people will never come to a council meeting and be heard. Those very people will not pick up the phone and call and say, what I need. Those very people, when we have board and commission openings, will not come and be a part of that process. So I don't know if it's that they don't understand the process and how important it is to be at the table, but it's so important that young people get involved in this process because your future is at stake. Our future is at stake. The young people, I want to make sure that I am grooming and I set up the next person to take my seat, that there's a young person who's ready to take on this public service, to take it to the next level, because I know that there are young people who can do this. And you know better than I know what the millennials need. So millennials, your voice, the millennial group right now is just on fire. Generation X on fire, getting out there when it comes to a shooting or something that's going on, out there and making sure voices are heard. But in addition to protesting and making sure your voices are heard in the street, You need to be at the table making decisions as to how things are going to progress for the future of the group.
And it's interesting that you say that, and what I'm finding out, I'm from Selma, Alabama, which has been termed the voting rights capital of the world. And even in that place here in 2016, there are many aspects of political office, the voting process that citizens don't know. They don't know that your voting registration is also reflected in these juries that are brought together in these cases. So you got to be registered to vote to be able to have fair representation when it comes time to get a jury together. So it's things like that for some strange reason we've missed. We haven't been educated or not knowledgeable about. And so, from what I'm seeing with this heightened awareness of things that are going on in the world, it's showing up in social media. We're getting a little bit more information on how each one of these pieces plays a role, how your local elections are very important. Your local elections and being involved in that are just as important as going in November and voting for the president. So it's kind of unfortunate that it's taken us this long to get to this point, but I'm kind of hopeful that, we're getting information and we're getting involved in a way that we probably should have been involved many years ago.
But you said one thing in Selma, the Voting Rights Act. The people who fought so that we would have an opportunity to vote. That is so important, and we can't forget the sacrifices that were made so that we will have an opportunity to have our voices heard. We can't just be I don't feel like my voice is going to be heard or my one vote doesn't matter. You can't do that. When you think about the people who sacrificed their lives for our right to vote, now it's not the time not to vote. We should all take pride in the fact that that's our voice. When Lyndon B. Johnson gave the Voter Rights Act, he was like his whole aspect or the whole idea was that, okay, if I give them the right to vote, they'll have some control over their future. We can't forget that our vote allows us to control our future. And it's not just going to the polls and voting on the day. It's you have a right to, and once you voted, you need to be involved. Show up at planning commissions. Show up at these commissions and tell people how the rules that they're making in your community are affecting you. Because if you don't go and say that, how are they to know? As an elected official, we're not mind readers. I can't read your mind and know what's going on for you or what's not working for you. And I represent the majority. Now, you said something as that is so important that I have to reiterate, that the voters, when you go and register to vote, it doesn't just give you the opportunity to vote, but it puts you in the pool to be a juror. And when we want to be represented by our jury of our peers, we have to make sure that people are registered to vote. And you should take pride in being able to sit on the jury. I know very many people who don't want that process. But then you're denying somebody who's your peer the right to be represented by a jury of their peers. And so it's so important for young people. I can't reiterate enough. Register to vote. Take it seriously. And when you have an opportunity to be on a jury, take it seriously, and because you can be helping or impacting somebody's future.
I was actually looking at an interview, and you spoke about education being an area where you wanted to see improvement, but you also spoke about the water, mentioning that was something else that you wanted to see improved. So we saw the issues in Flint, Michigan, with the lead in the water. What are the areas of improvement around the water?
Sure. When it comes to water, so in San Mateo County or this region, we get our water from the Hetch Hetchy, and it's guided by the San Francisco Public Utilities and by BOSCWA. So SFPUC allocates water. East Palo Alto was incorporated late. We're the youngest city, as you've said, and our water allocation. Once we became incorporated, the county was kind of involved in how the water was allocated, and as a newly formed city, our residents or our staff, they were involved as well. But today, we're learning, or we've probably known for some time now, that the water allocation that we were given is not sufficient and is not allowing us to develop and grow like we should. Now, this process of water allocation and allowing cities to come in and request the water, some cities have more than enough water allocation that they're not going to use or that they're not using. And so we have to work through a process of figuring out, now, how do East Palo Alto get the water? Because we can't develop our city. We can't put in additional affordable housing, and there's so many things that we're being prevented from doing because we don't have enough water. Now, the water that we get from the SFPUC is some of the best water in this nation. But our problem is just the allocation and the fact that it is preventing us from growing.
But how does that happen? And the reason I asked that question, because it made me think about Flint, Michigan, which was kind of, I mean, it's obviously a different situation, but the allocation piece, who determines the allocation of water, and how does East Palo Alto have a limited supply of water? To me, it's hard for me to kind of grasp my hands around that entire process, because you would think that there shouldn't be an issue with if I need more water, I should be able to call up somebody and say, hey, give me more. We running out of water. But obviously it doesn't work like that. So how does a city like East Palo Alto become limited in their supply?
So, and again, that's when someone sat at the table, and I know the county was involved in the process. There were staff members from East Palo Alto who were involved in the process, and I believe the SFPUC of Bosqua. And the decision was made that for future growth, this is how much water would be needed. And so the planning process obviously wasn't done correctly, because no one thought, maybe they didn't think that we would grow to the point that we are. And I don't know how that would be the case because we haven't grown that much, or no one thought out what it would look like in the future. So I believe as a staff early on, we determined that we didn't have enough water allocation, and the request was made to SFPUC early on. But the water district has determined that it's given out all this water allocation, and they don't have additional water to allocate to anyone. So then it leaves the city to try to work with other cities to see if they would be willing to give up their allocation that they're not using. So there are some cities, and it's unfortunate that some cities don't want to work with you because they don't want to see you develop. But so the process is broken. So if you're sitting on a water allocation and your city is losing money because you're paying for, your deal says that you have to pay for water even though that you're not utilizing the water totally, your agreement says you still have to pay for water. So you're losing money on your water deal, and then you have another city that has more than enough water allocation, and even if they gave us the 1.5 million gallons a day, it would not affect their water allocation and their future development anyway. But you have to play the political game with somebody wanting to then tell you what you can build or what you can do with the water.
Okay, and can you reiterate to our audience again the demographics? 67% Latino, 17% Black. Is that accurate?
That is right. We're a multicultural community, so it's an equity problem. It comes down to equity. Because what other city, you have a community of color in San Mateo, in Silicon Valley, that is trying to fight for its existence by getting additional water. Because the additional water will allow us to build structures that would bring revenue to our city. We need additional revenue to just provide the necessary services for our residents. And it shouldn't be this way. Sometimes the process, I feel like it should be a little bit easier.
And this may be a stretch, but this is the place where racism can find its way into our day-to-day life and into our systems. There's a lot of question about whether racism can exist in 2016. Where is it? We don't see it. I think this is one of those places where you could see that, where a city, based off of the demographics of another city, may reject the opportunity to help that other city out because of the racial breakdown of the neighboring city.
Yes, or just, it could be that. It can just be, there are certain cities that are anti-development. Mm-hmm. I don't want my city to grow anymore. So if I don't want my city to grow, I don't want you to be across from me developing your city and bringing more traffic to the city. So I'm not going to give you water.
That's crazy. And to me again, if if someone needs water, you see that they're running out of water. To me, it should be a no-brainer. And at some point, you have to put political gain or whatever to the side for the better good of human beings, and it baffles me when there's an uphill climb for something such as water in the United States of America.
And I must say that the SFPUC has decided to make this issue one of their top priorities to solve it. So they are working with us. People understand that this is indeed an equity issue. It is an unfair issue that's facing East Palo Alto. And so we're going to continue to work. I am on the water committee working with our staff and with other communities to see what it looks like, if it's going to be possible, and how do we get additional water. So outside of that, as a community, we're building or drilling 2 wells to bring groundwater into our system. A lot of people don't want you to blend groundwater because, as you probably are aware, many times you have communities of color, and we are in the area where nobody else has wanted to live. This city that we live in used to be at the end there was the community or the county dump where they had what was the company? Romic was here, and it contaminated to groundwater and the community. And our young people. We have an organization called UCA, and they fought to close Romic, who was contaminating our soil and not good for the community. When you talked about young people have a voice and they can be heard, and it took a group of young people who said enough is enough. We're not going to have these people contaminating our community and our soil and our groundwater. And they protested, and they caused enough noise to Romic until Romic closed and left our community. But we're still faced with this contaminated soil and getting it remediated and cleaned up within our communities. If you're taking groundwater, you have to worry about land subsidence since we are in a drought. And in addition, when you're by the bay, you don't want saltwater intrusion. You don't want to pull so much water that you bring salt water into your groundwater, because then your water is no longer water that you can drink.
I noticed that your seat expires in November. Are you? I did not know. I did not see if you were running for re-election of city council or what was next for you.
So I am up for re-election. I want to be able to continue to do some of the work that we have been working on as a community and as a council. So there are 4 people running for 3 seats, and I'm out in the community campaigning. I was out this morning, so it is my desire to be back on council. I've got to work. I want to continue to work on the issues of water. When we were in Washington, D.C., we were in line for the My Brother's Keeper initiative, and as mayor, I signed President Barack Obama's initiative, My Brother's Keeper initiative, for our community, and our council unanimously approved it as well. And as you're aware, and probably, I don't know if your listeners are, but we want to make sure that people understand that this initiative is to change outcomes for young men and boys of color. And in our community, we include young women, because our young women are facing many of the challenges that our young men are facing. And we want to make sure that the 6 initiatives that are covered are making sure our kids are entering school ready to learn, that they're reading at 3rd grade level, because statistics show that our kids learn to read from preschool to 3rd grade. But from 3rd grade on, you're reading that material so that you can learn it and you'll understand it. And when tests are taken at that level, if our kids are not reading at their grade level, it's very difficult many times to catch up. And in many cities or states, those test scores can be an indication as if our federal government decides to build a prison or not. Because if you're not graduating from high school, and if they're going to say that you're not going to graduate from high school, they're going to build a prison because they think that that's where you're going to end up. So we want to work on that issue. We want to make sure that more of our young people are graduating from high school, that they're going to college. When they come home from college, that they have careers. So we're working on diversity. And for those who've had issues and have gotten in trouble, let's make sure that they get second chance. Kids are kids, and they do things. Adults do things. But if you've gotten in trouble, you should be able to have a second chance, and we want to decrease the violence within in our community.
You're a woman of color. You've held the mayoral seat as well as you're currently on the city council. And I don't know how involved you are with social media, but there's really been, in my opinion, you see a lot of the black women and the black girl magic and just this social media encouragement. What would you say to the African American women and just Latino women and women of color?
We have a seat at the table, and we have to make that seat. I know Sheryl Sandberg talked about leaning in, and I believe that our voices need to be heard. And so I encourage every young woman or woman in general not to be fearful of of running for office or having your voice heard or participating in this system. America is a democracy. Our voices definitely need to be heard. So I would encourage anyone. I also I sit on the board of directors for BWAPA, Black Women Organized for Political Action, and we had some of our fellows there at CBC that were participating. So we encourage young women to be a part of the process, because many times men don't necessarily want to make a seat for you or make room for you at the table, or they want to minimize your ability or your reasoning for being there. So know that there's room, and if somebody doesn't make room, you make room for yourself and pull a seat to the table and be a part of the process.
I was actually looking at you all city council members online, and outside of the mayor, you're the only other woman that's on the city council. So do you ever feel as though your voice isn't being heard?
Yeah, there was a time where I think it was important to let people know that I was there for a reason. My voice was I was elected by the community for a reason, and I had my voice. But I feel at this point my community respects me for the work that I've done and the work that I do. So I don't have as many issues. But there are women who we still have to struggle to get women involved. In addition to being on BWAPA, I went through an Emerge program, and it's a program for Democratic women to train women to run. We need more women to run and to be in elected office. We need the voice of women, and not only to be in political office, but to line yourself to be in leadership on some of these jobs. Because when women are involved, we think about families, and everybody wins. A woman is at the table to help with decisions.
Absolutely. BG.
I agree with that totally. That's a perfect segue as we sit here on the
and I was throwing you that alley up. I know you very well, my friend.
I appreciate that. With possibly having the first woman as the president of the United States. So, Lisa, what are your thoughts with what you've seen at this point as we gear up? We're right at maybe 2 months away from the actual election day. What are your thoughts on the debates and all of the lead up to this point where we are now?
I'm excited for this first debate and frustrated. There are times that I feel like, is this really happening in America today? That somebody who's a bigot, fearmonger, who has already demonstrated he doesn't care about anyone else, can be in a leadership role for the United States of America. Are you serious? This is not a reality TV. We don't get to hit reset and go back if he were to get in office. This is serious. I posted that the stakes could not be any higher than what they are right now. So it is imperative that people get out and vote. And this whole notion around Hillary, and I'm with her. I'm going to say I'm with her. I'm going to be with her. I'm going to ride with her, and I'm pushing for Hillary. Some of the things that she's done and the negative attention that she's received, if Hillary were a man, we would not be complaining about half the things that she's done. She's played the game, and she's done it well, but because she's a woman, we question her ability. The email thing that keeps coming up makes absolutely no sense. It's already been demonstrated that she didn't do anything wrong, but America has to know that Hillary has already demonstrated that she is for America. She served her time. When some of the things that she's done, I wasn't even aware of until the Democratic convention when they got up and they just gave some of her background and her history and how she's been there for social justice and how she's paid her dues. So why are we questioning? Even as we prepare for this debate, people are saying that as long as Trump doesn't make any mistakes and he doesn't say anything silly, he's going to be he could win the debate. Does that make sense?
You bring up a good point that I'll ask you after you finish your thought process, but I think the media has a lot to do with that.
I do too. I mean, because why does he get so much media play? He can do anything. This man is out of control. He, as a commander of somebody who wants to be a commander in chief, and you are going to speak on social media and get on Twitter and respond to everything. That's not a commander in chief. And as a commander-in-chief, you have to be prepared to represent the United States, not just one or two groups, but you have to represent the United States and do what's best for the majority of the people here in the United States.
When you see outlets like Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, do you think that what role, in your opinion, should they play, and have they been playing that role?
I wish they were neutral. I wish there was a neutral place, and like, why do you have to report on every little silly thing that he says? Because I believe in marketing, he's probably believing it too, that he's getting exposure if it's negative or not, but it's still getting his name out there. So the
Absolutely
coverage is not equal. So why give him so much coverage? So I wish the media could take a neutral place and talk about the issues, really, in this election, and they have not done a really good job of that. Some of the other stations I don't even watch because I know they're pro-Trump, and it's scary when you talk about racism in America and it not being here. If people don't think this country is racist, there's a lot of racism that's still happening today. And under Trump's leadership, I think it's going to come out of the closet, and it's going to be really tough for us. We cannot afford to have a Trump in the office.
I think that with the role that the media is playing, they are doing their best, or I don't know if it's intentional or unintentional, but I think that they are playing a major role in who gets elected in the upcoming election. And I don't know if that's and that scares me a lot, because I don't think that, to your point, that there's been neutral journalism being performed so much this year, and that's a scary thing.
It is scary. It's a frightening time. I've said, where am I going to go live? If he were to get in office, I don't know what I would do. So we have to fight. We have to get out and vote. As young people, I've heard a lot of people say that they don't like either candidate and they weren't going to vote. But to not vote is to vote for someone. And you don't want to sit at home and say you're not going to vote and have the wrong person end up in office. And this is not going to just affect the next 4 years. The person who gets in office will also determine who's going to be on our Supreme Court. Women's health is at stake. A lot of things are at stake right now. So on November 8th, we need people to get out and vote and to make sure that your voices are heard and we put the right person in the White House.
BG, this has been a great conversation. You want to add anything else to this?
I've enjoyed this, getting the insight of someone that has been at the top of her city and leading that area and the people of that area. It brought us that other perspective. We know the perspective of just being a constituent, but to hear someone in leadership talk about the inner workings of the politics and public service has helped me a lot.
It really has. How many people attend you all city council meetings, out of curiosity?
It varies. You may get a packed room if somebody's worried about illegal construction or something that really affects the community. And sometimes we go pretty late, and by the time our meetings are over, if it's going till midnight, we're in the chambers by ourselves. So it really it varies, and it depends on the topics that are being discussed.
BG, I know you. I know your. Well, I know your. I know your relatives. They're pretty active in attending those city council meetings. But do you attend the city council meetings, BG?
For me?
Yeah, I gotta do a better job. I gotta
Yeah,
do a better job of that piece
I
on that
I
front.
don't. They have, well, do have it where they do a live feed online.
I've seen that.
So you can
I've seen the
tune
several
in from
live
time
feed.
to time. That's what
I've
I'm
seen
talking
that.
about. Tune in from time to time. I don't go regularly. My folks go, so I kind of have representation that goes and keep me abreast of what's going on. But like Lisa just said though, when there's some pressing issue, people will be busting out of the seams at the chamber. But if it's just another session, it's maybe 15 to 30 people there observing or
But
partaking in the.
those are typically those sessions when the major decisions get made, the
Well,
ones that nobody's in
well,
attendance.
the tricky part about it is decisions are being made all the time. Like there's a decision pretty much
Exactly.
being made at every meeting, and it's just kind of how you feel about that particular issue. But at the end of the day, most of those decisions are going to affect you in one way or another, and you got to be there to really know what's going on. And if you have a council like we have, you can't really tell what's an important city issue by the way that they respond to it. But they could be voting against something that the city really needs, and it happens all the time.
So for us, I know our agenda is posted the Friday before our council meetings. We meet on the first and third Tuesday of every month, with August being our recess month. So many times residents can go in on Friday and look at the agenda and see what's coming up for Tuesday. And even if you can't be there, I've had people send me an email to tell me about an item that is important to them if they can't be there. So you still have a voice, and you can get to those that you know and make sure that your voice is still being heard if you can't be in that room.
Anything else, Ms. Lisa, you want to lead the people with? You can definitely use this time as an opportunity to speak to the people of East Palo Alto and leverage this however you would like. But floor is yours.
Sure. I just want to thank you for this time today. And I just want to say, in the light of everything that's going on within our community and our country, I have to reflect back on being a mother of young adults and of my son, who's my oldest. And I have to think about the day that he was born, all three of my children. I looked at them with so much potential. It is a sad state to be in a community or a country where we don't know if our young men and some of our young women are going to come home. If never before, we need to figure out this process of community policing and make sure that the right people are carrying guns, and that when things happen, that police do not feel like they can be the judge, jury, and executioner, that they find a way that if they have to use some type of force, that they're used force to wound somebody, not to kill. So I am pushing, and I would like to see us push for that legislation, that we change the way that police are doing their work. Lastly, what I would like to say, that as a council member and being up for re-election, I do hope that I have the opportunity, with the support of my community, to continue the work that I have been doing and that I see in the future that needs to be done. This issue around policing is something that we need to take and continue to work on. So I don't want to have another news feed where somebody is either shot because of the fact that they're carrying a book, they're shot because they're reaching for their wallet, they're shot because they're selling cigarettes, they're shot because they're selling CDs, they're shot because they didn't turn on a blinker, and all of these people are of color. Let's change the way the police are doing their work and make sure that they understand that they need to represent the community that they work in and learn to work with those communities. Again, I thank you for the time.
Do you fear that as a public servant, you standing for justice and standing for accountability for the guys in blue puts you in a compromising position, given that you work alongside of police?
No, I stand with the police because I will say that there are some police officers that are doing the right thing. And I have talked to my officers, and as a matter of fact, I'm trying to pull together with our media center, I've asked them to bring some of the police officers and some of the young men together in a room, and let's record with the judge. Let's record the relationships and what people see. Because I think police have to understand what it's like to be an African-American man wearing a hoodie walking down the street to just be stopped and frisked for no reason. But at the same time, I think our community needs to understand and see from the police eyes what they see when they're driving down the street. So we have a better understanding of what the issue truly is. Where I stand for right, and I want right on both sides. I want community. I want people to be able to go home at the end of the day, and I want what's right for our nation. So if somebody is out doing something wrong, it doesn't mean that I support that wrongdoing. If you're breaking the laws and breaking the rules, I don't support that. But they should have an opportunity to be tried, not killed in the street. So any officer who would think that I'm not on their side, I'm on the side of right. And I'll stand by that.
And everybody be held accountable for their actions.
Right.
I don't think any of us are immune to being held accountable for the things that we do, especially on our jobs. You know, if we do something wrong in our jobs, we're held accountable because we represent our professions and all of that. So I think that should be applied across the board. Everybody be held accountable for their actions. We thank you, Lisa, for this time, for this conversation. I always want to give you an opportunity if you have any social media connections that you utilize that can keep people connected to you. Now's a good time to share it if you have any.
You know, I have to say that I am on Facebook. Let's see, it's Lisa Yarbrough-Gauthier is my Facebook page, and there's also a Facebook page for Lisa Yarbrough-Gauthier, City Council member. I do have a Twitter feed, and it's Lisa4EPA. And I have not done much with the other social media. My daughter was supposed to help me with that because I'm so busy. I'm going to do better.
That's all
and
right.
shout out,
That's all right.
And shout out to your daughter too. She seems like she plays a very important role in your life. So shout out to her as well.
Yeah, all three of them are very, very much involved in my lives. I love them to pieces. To Brittany, the Spelman graduate, she did recently graduate with her master's degree from USC and is working as a therapist in L.A., working with some foster kids. So she's doing what she can do to make a difference. To Ashley, who's an ASU grad, and to my son Trey, who wants to be a chef. So he's working for a company in Palo Alto. So I'm very grateful, very blessed to have some wonderful children.
Ms. Lisa, thank you for joining us today.
Take care.
Well, BG,
Yes,
I think I didn't know she was ready. She got on the call and she went right into Charlotte and the unarmed black men and that whole debacle, which was she's for the people and she's for justice.
Which is perfect, man, because a lot of times in people that are politicians or in political office, they seem to shy away from those controversial issues. So it really made me excited to hear her be that adamant about it and be willing to talk about it from the jump. I think that's really a sign of a person that's tuned in to what's going on in these streets. So I like that.
I did too. I enjoyed it and I thought it was appropriate. And I really wanted her on this show, BG, not so much for the political aspect of it, but more so to encourage the women, for them to be able to speak with someone that has been a mayor that now sits on the city council, is very involved and active and just, more or less have a different perspective on public service as well as being a successful mother. So that was kind of my idea and approach when inviting her to be on the show.
Great call.
Let's get up out of here, man. How can the people reach us?
We are the Free Lunch Podcast, a member of the New South Movement Podcast Network. You can find us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Just search New South Movement, and you'll find us. Free Lunch, our sports podcast, the D1 Sports Talk Podcast, the Retroscope Podcast, Communal Expressions, and we got more on the way, man. Like I said the other day on Retroscope, I like what I'm seeing from the network, man. We're growing every day. we got something for everybody. So we trying to do a major over here. So y'all check for us. Tell a friend, find us, and rock with this train.
There you have it. We are the Free Lunch Podcast. I am your boy Tight.
And I'm PG the 272.
And we out of here. Peace.
The object of the game is to win.